Good afternoon. I like that little response back. Y'all were excited. Okay, all right. I like that. Makes me feel like I'm at home. Welcome to Boston University and welcome to our annual celebration in honor of the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., one of Boston University's most notable alumni. My name is Nicholas Bates, and I gotta say Nicholas because my mom is watching at home, and if I say Nick, she'll get mad. I am the proud director of the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground, and I am proud to serve as the second ever paid director in its history. I say that because it's important to talk about our elders. Martin Luther King Day celebration is a celebration of the radical king and a celebration of our elders as well. So we celebrate King and we celebrate Coretta Scott King as well, because without her, right, the noted human rights activist, there is no Martin Luther King Day holiday. And so today is a celebration of our elders. And I say second ever paid director of the Howard Thurman Center because I have to honor my professional elders. And so there is no Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground without Catherine Kennedy, who's the first ever paid director in the audience with us today. Secondly, I like to always say that we can't tell the story of the Howard Thurman Center without starting first with Howard Thurman, right? Howard Washington Thurman was the former dean of Marsh Chapel on our campus here, who was brought to this campus to build an interreligious, interethnic fellowship on our campus here at Boston University. Might I add, in the 1940s, at a place that was a historically Methodist institution. And so bringing a black man on this campus beginning that early, right, to visit at first to speak, but then also to consider, will he be dean of our chapel beginning in 1953, is really something historic to think about and consider. But so he begins his tenure in 1954. I'd like to give you all some years to really consider and think about, because folks always ask about the overlap between Martin Luther King Jr. and Howard Thurman on our campus. And I always like to point out for people that it's about a year's time, right? Very brief time and tenure on our campus. And so most notably, you'd know King to be sitting in Marsh Chapel taking notes as he listened to Reverend Thurman. And so there's always this joke that we hear about at times, it's been passed on along through the ages from some of King's contemporary of the time, where they would ask him and they would say, "Hey, Martin, did you understand what was happening today?" And he would go, "Yeah, nah." And he says that because Howard Thurman was the type of theologian who had sort of these deep pauses as he spoke and articulated himself, but he was also a theologian who was inspired by poetry. And so we got to make sure we include all of those things. But I say we must honor our elders because we speak about the Thurman Center. We start with Howard Thurman. We move on to former university historian Dean George McKechnie, who, if it was not for him, there would be no Howard Thurman Center. He was looked at as one of Howard Thurman's contemporaries and friends. So much so that their families affectionately referred to each other as Uncle Howard and Uncle George. So we must tell those stories. We must tell the story of Dean George passing on the legacy to Catherine Kennedy, who tells the story about 19 Deerfield Street. We can also talk about the garden level. And then when we speak about the garden level, we like to mix in former Associate Provost and Dean of Student Ken Elmore into that story and journey. Because again, when you ask students who are alumni of this institution and they're familiar with the Howard Thurman Center, they'll say, "Where's Miss Kennedy? How's Dean Elmore?" That's what happens when I speak to those alumni. So I always want to tell that story and include them a part of that. And I'm proud to follow in their footsteps. But I do lean on my professional elders to do that. So let's get to the occasion at hand. Each year here at Boston University, we are proud to celebrate the legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. And our attempt every year is to find a way to cover aspects of King that you may not be used to, that you may not be familiar with. I would say at this point, everybody knows the "I Have a Dream" speech, right? We've heard that. We've run it into various different ways. We've cut it short so we don't get the real point of the speech. We've done a lot of things with it, right? Our desire this year is to bring an aspect from a sermon that he started delivering in 1958 called "A Knock at Midnight." If you were with us last year, I shared an excerpt of A Knock at Midnight for you all to foreshadow this year's program. This is one of my favorite sermons because it involves King's critique, one, of religious institutions and their roles in our movement. Two, he uses this allegory of midnight to highlight the darkness and the despair that we can see in our society as we drift into moral decay. Secondly, he uses this allegory of the theme of a persistent knock as people challenging the moment and asking for more in the moment. And so we wanted to take this opportunity to illuminate this aspect in this sermon, to know that he began delivered in 1958, but it's also published in one of his books in 1962 as well. King offers a powerful critique of the church as well, imploring religious institutions to become transformative forces by providing spiritual guidance to a populace navigating a society in moral decay. Simply, our goal here is to inform you, to implore you to engage. And if I deviate from the script a little bit, I would really hope everyone spends this time evaluating our interior minds and our interior emotions as we think about that, as we think about how we respond to the times. If I could share something from Howard Thurman, he would always say it's easy to respond to hate with hate. He would also say hate for Howard Thurman is equivalent to violence. So even to evoke that emotion, that thinking, is violent. And so for Thurman, he would look at love as sort of the antithesis to violence. And so I'm imploring us to think about in this moment as we're faced with a society that we believe could be drifting into moral decay, that we think about how we keep open the doors to our hearts. So here's what I want to do with you all. I was looking at our archives, and I want to thank you really quickly to BU Libraries, who has these wonderful photos that are some are in the room and some are outside, and there'll be tours of the Martin Luther King Reading Room for you all later. I was looking at our archives as I love to do, and I love to see the depth of our archives and the amount of people in it. But something that was special on my heart today is I was thinking about the Nikki Giovanni archive. And I was thinking about a poem that I found that I wanted to use it last year, but I feel like it's a little bit more fitting this year to honor Nikki Giovanni and her passing this past December. So the following is a poem by Nikki Giovanni titled "In the Spirit of Martin." It was dedicated to Martin Luther King. This is a sacred poem. Blood has been shed to consecrate it. Wash your hands, remove your shoes, bow your head. I have a dream. This was a magical time. Hi-ho, silver away. Oh, Cisco, oh, Pancho, here I come to save the day. I want the world to see what they did to my boy. No, no, no. I'm not going to move. If we are wrong, then the Constitution of the United States is wrong. Montgomery, Birmingham, Selma, 4 little girls, constant threats, constant harassment, constant fear, SCLC, Ralph and Martin, Father Knows Best, Leave It to Beaver, Ed Sullivan. How long? Not long. But what Mr. Thoreau said to Mr. Emerson, are you doing out? This is a letter from Birmingham City Jail. This is a eulogy for Albany. This is a water hose for Aniston. This is a thank you to Diane Nash. This is a flag for James Farmer. This is a how can I make it without you to Ella Baker. This is for the red clay of Georgia that yielded black men of courage, black men of vision, black men of hopes, bent over cotton and sweet potatoes or pool tables and baseball diamonds, playing for a chance to live free and breathe easy and have enough money to take care of the folks they love. This is why we can't wait. That swirling Mississippi wind, that Alabama pine, that Tennessee dust defiling the clothes that women wash, those hot winds the lemonade couldn't cool, that let women know we too must overcome. This is for Fannie Lou Hamer, Joanne Robinson, Septima Clark, Daisy Bates, all of the women who said, baby, 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 I know you didn't mean to lose your job. I know you didn't mean to gamble the rent money. I know you didn't mean to hit me. I know the Lord is going to make a way. I know I'm leaning on the everlasting arms. How much pressure does the earth exert on carbon to make a diamond? How long does the soil push against the flesh, molding, molding, molding the moan that becomes a cry that bursts forth crystalline, unbreakable, priceless, incomparable? Martin, I made my vow to the Lord that I would never turn back. How much pressure do the sins of the world against the heart of a man who becomes the voice of his people? He should have had a tattoo, something like freedom now. Something like that that should have braided his hair, carried his pool cue in a mahogany case, wafted that wonderful laugh over a plate of skillet fried chicken, drop biscuits, dandelion greens on the side. This is a sacred poem. Open your arms, turn your palms up, and feel the spirit of greatness and be redeemed. Thank you, Nikki Giovanni. At this time, I would like to welcome to the stage Boston University's president, Dr. Melissa Gilliam. Dr. Gilliam joined our community in July as Boston University's 11th president. Dr. Gilliam is an esteemed and award-winning interdisciplinary researcher in medicine, public health, and the humanities. Please give another round of applause for Dr. Gilliam.
Thank you, Dr. Bates, for that introduction. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you. Good afternoon. Yes. Dr. Bates, we are grateful for your leadership of the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground, which for nearly 40 years has been one of Boston University's jewels. The center is the university's cultural hub, an inclusive space that encourages young people to step outside of their comfort zone and to build relationships to share their experiences with others. And this is what we do at universities. We bring people from all over the world, from all walks of life, and we form community and lifelong relationships. Thank you, too, for hosting today's event. This is the perfect venue to celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who famously called Howard Thurman a mentor and a friend. Certainly, Dr. Thurman had a significant influence on Dr. King and the path towards justice that he chose to follow throughout life. I want to thank Mayor Wu and her team and the City of Boston, the Dean of Students' Office, Government and Community Affairs, and the BU Library Special Collections for the co-sponsorship of today's celebration. We are honored to call the City of Boston our home and to work closely with Mayor Wu and her team on issues of peace and prosperity and find ways to make our communities safer, healthier, more sustainable, more affordable, and more accessible to everyone. These goals that we share are not so different from the ones that Dr. King fought so hard for. Thank you to today's speakers, the incomparable writer and poet, Cole Arthur Riley. Shugun Idowu, Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion for the City of Boston, and Associate Professor of New Testament at Boston University School of Theology, Dr. Shively T.J. Smith. Thank you to our student participants, Maria Elena Suazo Rosario and Bermina Cherry. And thank you as well to the Hamilton Garrett Youth Choir, who will end today's program with a performance. As you heard, today's theme is The Darkness at Midnight, which takes inspiration from Dr. King's speech, A Knock at Midnight. I'd like you, for a moment, to imagine yourself in a pew at Mount Zion Baptist Church. I invite you to close your eyes if it feels right for you to do so. It is February 11th, 1962, one of the several times Dr. King is reported to have given this talk. And he has just taken his place in the pulpit. And as you imagine yourself seated in the church among the parishioners, perhaps you have invited friends to come with you. You hear the melodic baritone and building cadence of Dr. King's voice as he begins his exegesis on the Gospel of Luke. I come this morning to try to preach, he begins, and I would like for all others, men and women alike, to think with me from the subject, a knock at midnight. Dr. King goes on to tell the parable of a man who, in his time of need, goes to his neighbor to seek bread because he is hungry. And the man's knock, made at midnight, his knocks go unanswered, and the man is left alone. He is hungry, perhaps without hope, and certainly surrounded by darkness. And as you, along with Dr. King, feel the cold that has enveloped the man in Luke's scripture, I also invite you to place yourself in the historical context of King's speech as best you can. As King continues to speak, you begin to hear him talk about a society in a moral, spiritual, and psychological state of chaos. We are experiencing a darkness so deep that we can hardly see which way to turn, he says. And later he laments, the great problem of mankind today is still, there is too much hatred around. The year was 1962, and he has taken the pulpit during the heart of the civil rights movement. It is less than a year following the Freedom Rides and a few months prior to the integration of the University of Mississippi. I personally can relate to this year. It is just 1 year after my mother, Dorothy Butler Gilliam, became the first Black woman to work as a reporter for the Washington Post. And it was a good thing they hired her, because she was able to go to Mississippi and cover the integration of Old Miss, and to meet with families and people throughout the Black community to tell a story that otherwise the Washington Post readers would not have heard. And so while King preached of darkness, there was already light. I invite you now to let that hard sentiment stay with you and return back to 2025. Open your eyes if they were closed and look around at where you find yourself today, back in Metcalf Hall in the George Sherman Union. What do you see? A room filled, not with darkness, but with love and concern and caring. A room full of people from all walks of life and backgrounds and beliefs who are sitting here in community. Now, I'm not a theologian, but King talked about the other side of the dirty shade of gray. And that is midnight in the moral order for King. That is the dawning of a new morning. So let me tell you something. I woke up this morning and it was dark outside. And the realities of the day and the moment we find ourselves in started to rush in. And then the sun rose, and it was a beautiful morning. Yes, there are wildfires, there are wars, there are unhoused people, there is poverty, but there is also great beauty. Let me tell you about yesterday. Yesterday, I was greeted by the staff and faculty of Boston University's Wheelock College of Education. And they taught me about their long, long history of deaf education and scholarship. They taught me about the tradition of giving a sign name so one does not have to spell out all of the individual letters of a name within the deaf community. But it is also to signify belonging to this distinct and special community. And I was invited into the deaf community, and I was given a sign name. So yes, Dr. King, there is too much hatred, but there is so much love. And while it is dark at midnight, I am already standing in the light. Dr. King, of course, largely found his own solace and a right path forward through Scripture. And at Boston University, we can look to our history, to our founding values, and to the words of leaders who have come before us to understand this light. Our founding president, William Fairfield Warren, called the university a society realizing the highest known ideals in individual and social character and life, and of propagating these ideals from one generation to another and from one land to another so long as the world shall stand, end quote. I love this quotation for its aspiration. It sets a high standard for us to reach for, and historically, the people of Boston University and this institution have aimed high, and at times, we have achieved greatness. From its beginning, Boston University has championed a diversity of backgrounds, identities, experiences, and perspectives, which is essential to learning. We have championed free speech and listening to ideas and viewpoints, even if we disagree. And knowing more about others who are different from us and hearing genuine, real perspectives that are new to us are both so important to putting the chaos of misinformation and hate at bay. There is nothing more beautiful or more profound than learning to love and overcoming hate. King came here to Boston University because he saw these values reflected in the people and the scholarship of our institution. Dr. King and his mentor, Dean Thurman, both believed that a common humanity could bind us together despite our differences. And yet, how do we build this sense of trust? How do we find our common humanity? In my mind, there is no better way than through service. In 1957, in Montgomery, Alabama, Dr. King famously called life's most persistent and urgent question, "What are you doing for others?" In one of his final sermons before his death, King said from the pulpit of his beloved Ebenezer Baptist Church, "If you want to be important, wonderful. If you want to be recognized, wonderful. If you want to be great, wonderful. But recognize that he who is greatest among you shall be your servant." That's a new definition of greatness. By giving that definition of greatness, it means that everybody can be great because everybody can serve. You only need a heart full of grace, a soul generated by love, and you can be that servant. One reason that I am so filled with joy is that I can serve others. I did this first as a physician, a scholar, and an educator, and now as the leader of this university. And I know that you all in this room, from Boston University, from Mayor Wu's office in the city of Boston, and others here celebrating the legacy of this incredible man, we share this vision of service as the highest ideal for us to aspire to. At Boston University, this is in our mission statement. It says, "We are committed to generating new knowledge to benefit society, and that higher education should be conducted in the service of the wider community, local and international." And I'll end by saying that as I look around the room today, I see all kinds of people devoted to service, public servants, educators, students who volunteer in their communities, staff members who work tirelessly to keep our students safe and to ensure that they have what they need from their college experience to feed us this food that we enjoyed this morning. Yes, Dr. King, there is too much hate in this world. But that will always be true because one iota of hate is too much hate. But oh, my friends, there is so much love. Let us face the challenges of today together. Let us face this new morning together, and let us continue to serve others. We are bounded by our commitment to make a difference in the world. Thank you.
All right. At this time, let's please welcome to the stage Maria Elena Suazo Rosario. Maria Elena is a first-year student in the College of General Studies and also a graduate of Charlestown High, and won the Community Service Award to enable her to study here at Boston University. Welcome to the stage, Maria Elena.
Good afternoon, everyone. The following quote from Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King's sermon, A Knock at Midnight. Following the quote, I will read the bio of Shogoni Dowu, Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion for the City of Boston. At midnight, colors lose their distinctiveness and become a sullen shade of gray. Moral principles have lost their distinctiveness. For modern men, absolute right and absolute wrong is a matter of what the majority is doing. Right and wrong are relative to likes and dislikes and the customs of a particular community. We have unconsciously applied Einstein's theory of relativity, which properly describes the physical universe, to the moral and ethical realm. Midnight is the hour when men desperately seek to obey the 11th commandment, thou shalt not get caught. According to the ethic of midnight, the cardinal sin is to be caught, and the cardinal virtue is to get by. It is all right to lie, but one must lie with real finesse. It is all right to steal, if one is dignified that, if caught, the charge becomes embezzlement, not robbery. It is permissible to even hate, if one so dresses his hating garments of love, that is, hating appears to be loving. The Darwinian concept of the survival of the fittest has been substituted by philosophy of the survival of the slickest. This mentality has brought a tragic breakdown of moral standards, and the midnight of moral degeneration deepens. I would now like to call on our speaker to come to the stage. Shigoni Dowu, a lifelong resident of Boston. Shigon had joined the administration of Mayor Michelle Wu as Chief Economic Opportunity Inclusion in 2022. He focused on making Boston a resilient, economically equitable, and vibrant city that centers people and creates opportunities to build generational wealth for all communities. Please welcome Shigon to the stage.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Aren't we happy to be here? All right. Well, Dr. Bates said to me, I saw what you did earlier this week, where I told an unintentional lie at the Martin Luther King breakfast at the Omni on Monday, where I said to the crowd, I'm only going to talk for 5 minutes. And then I spoke for 18. And so this time I'm going to say I'm going to talk for 20 minutes so that when I speak for 5, you'll all be happy that I did not stick to that statement. So first of all, on behalf of Mayor Michelle Wu and baby Mira, it is a pleasure to be here and to represent our mayor and our team here at Boston University. And it's a particular pleasure for me to be here at Boston University in this particular role, speaking with all of you, because as someone that grew up in the city, I wound up tracing the path of Dr. King just a little bit, where I followed the footsteps of my grandfather, going to Morehouse College, and then what brought me back to Boston was my entry into Boston University School of Theology. And first I'll say there's a deep gratitude that should go to Morehouse, because so many Morehouse men think they're going to be the next Martin Luther King and come to Boston University School of Theology and pay that tuition. But very seriously, I'm so grateful to be you and the role that it's played in my own life in shaping it and making me who I am today, to have the privilege to be able to say that I'm standing here now as the Chief of Economic Opportunity and Inclusion, working for the Wu administration. So, on behalf of our mayor, on the city of Boston, I want to thank you, President Gilliam, for your leadership, for this opportunity, for continuing this legacy and tradition of hosting this particular event to not just honor the legacy of Dr. King, but to reinvigorate all who attend to continue to push his cause to create a more beloved community. I want to thank you also, Dr. Bates, for the work that you've been doing to lead the Howard Thurman Center. My time here was able to follow a former professor of mine, Walter Earl Fluker, who was deeply devoted to the mission and teachings of Howard Thurman. And so again, a privilege for me to be here and to share greetings on behalf of Dr. Lawrence Edward Carter Sr., Also a graduate of Boston University who was the founding dean of the Martin Luther King Jr. International Chapel on the campus of Morehouse. So again, it's my pleasure and privilege to be here. On behalf of our cabinet, for the last 1,118 days, I've been serving in this role alongside many a fine public servant to help make this city what it ought to be. And when I think of days like today and all who are gathered here, I think of the fact that the Boston of today is a Boston that could only have been dreamed of when Dr. King not only was here as a student, but then came back in 1965, leading 20,000 people to the Boston Common to march for more housing, for no police brutality, for better contracts for black business owners, et cetera. And today, serving in what is the most diverse cabinet in the city's history. We have our communications chief, who's a black woman, our Boston Police, our Boston Public Health Commissioner is a black woman, our chief of operations who manages all the public assets is a black man. I think of our chief of emergency management as a black man. I think of our chief of community engagement as a black woman, and there are so many others that we get to serve together to deliver for all the 681,937 residents here in the city, working together to deliver for the people of Boston. And so on their behalf, I want to thank, I saw Representative John Moran, all of our city and state colleagues who were here, and especially want to thank Commissioner Shea and Age Strong. I know before this gathering, how many of you enjoyed the breakfast? Absolutely. And that is part of the tradition as well, that prior to this, we bring all of those who helped to make Boston what it is today together to share a hot meal together and trade stories. So thank them for what they've been doing. And finally, on behalf of me, I want to thank Cole Arthur Riley for being here, and Dr. Smith, and we're looking forward to your conversation later today. Okay, so I've taken up 4 minutes and 30 seconds, so with all that. So in the few seconds that I have left, it is, for me, very appropriate that the theme of today is the darkness at midnight. We started this week with the theme of freedom isn't free. And we had, Dr. Angela Davis with us at the Omni talking about how this is a period that we have experienced before. This is not new. There's many folks in this room who have been through these periods and who understand what we're going through and are working with us and trading knowledge to show us the way out. And it's a wildly prophetic speech. The quote that was just shared by one of the greatest Boston Public School students that you heard just now, and even King talking about it's not the survival of the fittest, but survival of the slickest. And since I look at DC and I'm like, oh, it's just interesting that 60 years later we're still talking about the same thing. But there's something that Angela Davis talked about. There's something that folks in this room can remind us about, and something that Dr. King talked about. That yes, it's the darkness at midnight. And our president shared this in her remarks, but there is a dawn. But the only way we will make sure to see it through to the morning is by working together, by not losing sight of what that dream truly is, and not giving up on something that King truly embraced before his assassination in Memphis, Tennessee, clinging on to hope. And that is what we need right now. In fact, he said in his speech, when I get worried, we might be in the darkness of midnight, but when I get worried with all the things that we see happening across this country and across this world, there's one thing that I know, that God has not yet turned this world over to evil. And I think when we live with that fact in both our heads and our hearts, we have that faith to chart a new path forward and to make this world what it ought to be. Finally, I will just say, because I wouldn't be doing my job if I did not recount some of the work that Mayor Wu has led to ensure that the Boston of today, or rather that when we are reading the speeches and words and sermons of Dr. King, that some of those things should not still apply to the city of Boston. We only want the words of King talking about that dream of a beloved community to be true one day, but we don't want to keep saying that, when he was talking about police brutality and no contracts going to black businesses and black folk not getting housing in the city. We don't want those words to still be true. And so as an administration, in just our 3 years, we've made sure that the majority of not just the affordable rental units, but that home ownership units, that the majority of those opportunities going to black and brown people here in the city, ensuring that not just getting people into homes, but all the developers through our Welcome Home Boston program right now who are developing 200 more units of affordable home ownership opportunities are all black and brown. So we're creating this ecosystem of delivering dollars into the pockets of black businesses who are creating these units then for black and brown folks to live in and generate wealth in. And finally, even when it comes to our contracting, 1965, like I said, 20,000 folks marching to say that folks should have access to these opportunities. One of those folks was my grandfather, the Reverend Earl Lawson, a former pastor of Emmanuel Baptist Church in Malden, Massachusetts. And I, have his photo in my office looking over every day to make sure I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. But also to make sure that I get to look at it and say that I'm making this person, that I was able to call grandpa, someone I had noble exposure to make him proud, because before we came into our roles, it took 5 years for the city to deliver a total of $30 million to black and brown businesses out of $2 billion. $30 million over the 5 years. And in just 1 year, last year, this administration delivered $100 million of contracts to black and brown businesses, more than tripling what it took 5 years for this city to do. So we continue to work. We rely on all of your partnership, all of your expertise, all of your wisdom. And so I end by saying, Dr. Gilliam, with the darkness that we see happening across the world, I have to say publicly what I've said privately and what I know the mayor has said privately, that no matter what's happening in Washington, D.C., with the executive orders, with the court decisions, this city has your back and the back of Boston University, and we support your leadership. And again, something that Dr. King did not see, a black woman leading Boston University, something for all of us to be proud of, and certainly are proud of you. And I end with that example and so many others that are in this room, because there's something that, I said that speech was prophetic, but our folks are a prophetic people, because there's something that we kept telling each other through the 246 years of slavery and then the period thereafter where we continue to push toward liberation, and something that Dr. King lifted up in his speech, that trouble don't last always. And so we're looking forward to the day after, where trouble don't last always, but where that beloved community exists for us all. So thank you all for being here, and we're looking forward to the conversation.
Please welcome to the stage Bermina Sherry. Bermina is a senior studying political science. That's right, y'all, senior studying political science with a minor in African American and Black Diasporic Studies. She's also a resident of Boston as well. Please welcome Bermina to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody. I like that, yes. Yes, you did hear a senior. I made it, yes. And again, I'm a political science major here at BU with a minor in African American and Black Diaspora Studies. So I find it fitting as a scholar of Black Studies that I'm humbled to be here in your presence. I will be reading both Cole and Dr. Smith's bios, and once I'm finished, Cole will come to the stage to deliver remarks. Following Cole's remarks, Dr. Smith will also join Cole on stage for a reflective dialogue regarding our theme. So co-author Riley is a writer and poet. She is the author of the New York Times bestsellers, This Here Flesh, Spirituality, Liberation, and the Stories That Make Us, and Black Liturgies, Prayers, Poems, and Meditations for Staying Human. Her writing has been featured in The Atlantic, Guernica, and The Washington Post. Cole is also the creator and writer of Black Liturgies, a project that integrates spiritual practice with Black emotion, Black literature, and the Black body. Dr. Shively T.J. Smith is an associate professor of the New Testament and director of the PhD program at Boston University School of Theology and a fellow of the Howard Thurman Center. She has spent over 20 years in the study of the Bible, spirituality, and theology. Howard Washington Thurman and 19th century, she has spent over 20 years in the study of the Bible, spirituality, and theology, Howard Washington Thurman, and 19th century African American women's literature. A summa cum laude and Phi Beta Kappa graduate of Fisk University, she earned master's degrees from Candler School of Theology and Columbia Theological Seminary and her PhD in New Testament Studies from Emory University. She serves as resident scholar and an itinerant AME elder in the historic church, the Cathedral of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, Metropolitan AME Church in Washington, D.C. Please welcome to the stage Cole Arthur Riley.
Hello. Thank you to Boston University, specifically the Howard Thurman Center for Common Ground, and the City of Boston for having me. Thank you for trusting me in this space. A Knock at Midnight. Dr. King's sermon, as we've heard, begins with a parable from Luke. In it, a man comes to visit, and he has nothing to give the traveler. And so he then goes to his friend at midnight and knocks on the door to ask for food. And in the parable, there's imagination for a situation in which the friend doesn't answer. He doesn't want to wake his house. He doesn't want to get out of bed and wake his kids and leaves the man without. And then at the end, the parable alters that, subverts that expectation, and has an imagination for the visited who answers. And does indeed provide the food. The famous refrain in the sermon is, of course, it's midnight. It's midnight. And King kind of masterfully reimagines this parable, which has typically been reserved for kind of lessons on prayer, and he applies them to our moment in the exterior world, a kind of collective dark midnight for the world. He says it's midnight. It's midnight in the social order. And he references the terrors of Vietnam. He references what he calls the tragic contest for supremacy. Now, I imagine I don't have to spend a great deal of time connecting for you why that application is still meaningful for us today. I join the chorus of others who have named that our country and its allies are perhaps in a collective dark night of the soul. And to be a person who rises in the night and makes that perilous journey to utter what I think are some of the most sacred words, which are help, to be a person who possesses enough vision to make out a stranger's face in the darkness and still find something worth saving, something worth nourishing, is no minor triumph. But today I want to speak to you about a different midnight. It's the second midnight Dr. King mentions in the sermon. He says, the midnight in man's external collective life has brought about midnight in his internal individual life. He says it's midnight in the psychological order, in the psyche. He says, everywhere there are people who are harrowed by day and haunted by night with paralyzing fears. Deep clouds of anxiety and depression are floating in so many of our mental skies. Indeed, people are more emotionally disturbed today than at any other period of human history. Which is to say, and remains worth saying, that it is midnight in our interior worlds. So this is our question. In a world of every kind of terror and shadow, in a time when We can so easily feel helpless, and our resistance can feel futile. What does it mean to reclaim? What does it mean to liberate our interior worlds? How do we become so acquainted with our inner lives and our inner dignity that whenever we encounter something external that's a threat to it, we know ourselves well enough to name that with the urgency it demands? So again, I'm Cole. I'm a writer. I'm a poet on my best days. And one of my projects is a digital writing practice called Black Liturgies, where I will couple meditations from Black literary ancestors with my own reflections and contemplations, breath practice, and I'll share them online. And this Monday, I shared a post and some quotations from Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and Coretta Scott King to honor them, and coupled it with some thoughts on surviving kind of the terror of our moment, the fear that we're feeling. And one of the first comments on that post that I got, it was a Black man about my age. He just said, "Why all of this gloom and doom stuff?" I'm sparing you an expletive. He said, "Why all this gloom and doom stuff?" Which, this is absolutely no shade to him. I found the comment funny, and I understood it. I understand that impulse to kind of want to rush past what's happening inside and kind of look toward survival. This is how we got through. Everything's going to be okay. But I think it's important now more than ever to be honest about what is happening on the inside. You know, God knows it's becoming increasingly difficult to understand what is actually happening in our external circumstances, to understand what's real and what's not. I want to know myself, you know, deeply. The fears, the desires, the emotions, which includes joy, by the way. It's not all gloom and doom, but I now more than any other time in my life, I don't want to look inward and not know how to see in the dark. So often when we talk about traveling in, when we talk about our inner life, our interior worlds, it can be mistaken as this practice that's suggesting that we should just ignore or pull away from the exterior world in order to deal with us. And this can raise alarm bells for those of us who care about justice and liberation, because we've seen what it means when spiritual people kind of retreat into language of the invisible soul and the invisible matters and fail to acknowledge or really deal in the very real and present threats to people's bodies in the world around us today. So I like to be clear, this is not our call. When I talk about liberating our interior worlds, it's not an exercise in self-absorption, it's not a distraction or even escapism. It is, I believe, how our ancestors survived. When I was writing my first book this year, Flesh, which is an intergenerational storytelling account, 3 generations in my family, it occurred to me that my ancestors, particularly those who were enslaved, had a defiant fidelity to their inner lives. They didn't always have agency over their bodies. They couldn't always speak the words they wanted to speak. They couldn't always alter the conditions under which they were oppressed. But they did have those secret places in the interior, those hidden, corridors of the heart where no master could go, no whip could touch, no tyrant. And this was protected. So much was protected and safeguarded and altered in the interior in the absence of immediate relief in their physical circumstances. This is our task, to stay near to ourselves, to be able to locate ourselves, our true selves. I like to share with you a portion of a commencement address given by Howard Thurman in 1980 which, as we've heard, friend and pastor to Dr. King, of course. It's a very famous address, so I suspect at least some of you have heard it before, but receive a few pieces of it again. He says, "There is something in every one of you that waits, listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. And if you cannot hear it, you will never find whatever it is for which you are searching. And if you hear it and then do not follow it, it was better that you had never been born." He says, and if you cannot hear the sound of the genuine in you, you will all your life spend your days on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. He says, there is in you something that waits and listens for the sound of the genuine in yourself. And sometimes there's so much traffic going on in your minds, so many different kinds of signals, so many vast impulses floating through your organism that go back thousands of generations, long before you were even a thought in the mind of creation. And you are buffeted by these. And in the midst of all of this, you have got to find out what your name is. He says, who are you? How does the sound of the genuine come through to you? I think what Thurman is getting at here is that we have a spiritual and maybe moral imperative to locate ourselves, to know ourselves, our true selves. It's an anti-delusion practice, yes. It's a resistance of self-hatred, yes. It's a type of truth-telling, but it's also a justice practice. You know, if you listen closely, you heard him say, if you do not locate the sound of the genuine inside yourself, you will all your days find yourself on the ends of strings that somebody else pulls. Well, who's pulling the strings? Those metaphorical strings have everything to do with how injustice and indignity are perpetuated in the world. When you are poorly attuned to yourself, the stories that have formed you, your desires, what you want, how will you notice what compels you to vote for a particular candidate or demand particular policies, or knock at the door or not answer? If I'm going to survive, I need you to become unflinchingly honest with yourself about who you are, what has made you. I don't benefit from your self-ignorance, nor do you mine, right? If I'm going to get free, I need you to get free. And those strings, in Thurman's metaphor, those strings are chains. What will we do to shed those chains? Part of the midnight of the interior life is to be forced to truly examine those places in ourselves. What places are kind of shadows that you can rest in, that kind of darkness, and what places in you have actually been colonized by unlove, by greed, by despair, by self-hatred, by supremacy. To be truly liberated, we are going to have to confront what parts of ourselves are in hidden alliance with the very systems that seek to destroy us. And we have to go there and reclaim them. As Alice Walker wrote, she said, you got to hold tight to a place in you where they can't come. You got to hold tight a place in you where they can't come. If it's midnight, we will not be those who forget our own faces in the dark. Who are you? You've got to find out what your name is. Then and only then can you be trusted to answer any knock. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Dr. Shively T.J. Smith.
I think we all need to just take a Thurman breath. So can I invite the space to do what Thurman would invite us to do, which is to center down. So take a breath for a moment. Thurman would say how good it is to center down, to see oneself pass by. Sister Cole, I feel like you have invited us into a centering down space, an opportunity to see our many selves pass by and dwell in that space. So thank you so much
Thank you.
for that. Thank you. So I think we get to act as sisters and have some conversation and talking points and sort of explore some of what you have gifted us with as we think about King's sermon, A Knock at Midnight, and the resource of it for us in our contemporary moment. I really loved, as I was listening to you, I really loved how at the end you began to invite us into sitting in sort of the midnight of ourselves, what it means to sit there. I couldn't help but hear, actually, again, a friend and mentor of King Thurman in this. So Thurman, in his autobiography, in the first chapter, he's exploring some of his own spiritual formations. And one of the things that was key in Thurman's own formation as a child was Thurman actually loved the night. So, and he names it as midnight, but then the night. And in the night, Thurman says he found his conversation partners. In the night was where he could have the truest conversations with himself. And I heard that ancestral echo in what you were presenting to us. Can you talk a little bit more about what it means for us to be involved in this interior work in which the night is an invitation in us to begin to explore? What are we exploring? Are we exploring questions? Are we exploring the concerns of the day? What is happening as we're having these inner conversations?
Yeah, I think a number of things are probably occurring, or it can look different depending on, one's interior landscape. But when I imagine it, I imagine us going to kind of stories that have formed us, memories, but I think of kind of fears, desires, dreams, and stories, and things that kind of link. I'm sure I'm missing some as well, but things that kind of connect them. And I'm grateful that you mentioned kind of Thurman being a friend to the dark, because I think there is a kind of invitation. I love darkness. And I find a lot of beauty in it. And I think we hear midnight or we hear dark and immediately connect it to all kinds of like pejorative, negative associations. But there are different kinds of darkness. I've said it very briefly in my talk. Are there shadows in you that you can rest in? Yeah. Shadows get a bad rep, but when it's too bright, a shadow can be a haven. So I think our job, kind of this journey, is to go to the places that aren't just difficult and sad, but also to see opportunities where you can meet yourself in new ways. We rest really well in the dark, Yeah. We dream in the dark. All kinds of things are birthed out of darkness. And there's all sorts of images of the darkness that I think show that it's more than just despair.
Yeah. I think in your book, This Here Flesh, you begin to sort of give us what I would call elements of spirituality that are invitational. So a different kind of way of thinking about these matters of midnight and darkness. You begin with your first chapter is dignity, your last chapter is liberation, but in between there we have these chapters that talk about wonder, they talk about justice, they talk you're talking about place, right? What is the role of matters of dignity, matters of place, belonging, as we think about the work we're doing internally as also external matters? What I mean by this, typically when we think about belonging, especially in contemporary conversations, belonging a lot of times for people has something to do with place, right? So who are the people that I belong to? Where are the places that I belong and don't belong? But in your This Here Flesh, and as you sort of think about King, it seems like you're also inviting us to think about matters of place and belonging as sites within us that impact how we interact with the external places of belonging and place. Is that a fair reading, or what are the opportunities for thinking across the divides of external and internal?
Yeah. I I think you get me. Because, you know, you start with dignity. I think often, especially when it comes for the appetite for Black stories, that there's a kind of white appetite, I would say, for only stories of Black pain.
All right.
That is what sells. That is what publishers want.
That's right.
And it takes a lot of kind of interior stability to resist that. And I knew I was going to be telling stories in this year flesh of my grandma and my father. And I wanted to take good care to make it so that they could not be reduced to a 2-chapter story. This is their pain and trauma. This is how they overcame, you know. That's not what I wanted for them. Yeah, I wanted more nuance. I wanted to complicate it. And we begin with dignity because that's where we began. We began with our parents, you know, my dad licking his thumbs and pressing them on my eyebrows and saying, "You look good, you know, do you feel good?" And this reverence for the Black body long before anyone taught me to hate my Blackness. I had, you know, countless people looking at me saying glory. Yeah. And so I wanted to start with dignity and give these little pieces almost as an awakening of child when you start to realize, okay, I'm not just a home, I'm in a city or I'm in a neighborhood. I know my neighbor, that's my place. I'm not just in a place, but now I have friends, you know, and so then we get into belonging. I wanted to, best I can, kind of complicate the story a bit with some other core parts of what it means to be human. We have those parts too. They're just not sold as easy.
Yeah. So you say in the book, you make this beautiful sentence that says that communal storytelling is an act of justice, and we must examine the historians we choose. I love that phrase. Communal storytelling is an act of justice. And I think about this moment of the MLK Day, how this sort of is an annual return to the storytelling of King. And that we have chosen King to not just be a storyteller, but he's a historian for us. We return to the storytelling places or figures to hear our stories, Thurman, with a new sound, right? What is the role of us as we think about the communal storytellers that we listen to, or the communal storytellers that we have yet to invite in, that we need as we care for ourselves as inner beings embodying and walking in this world? What is just about identifying, naming, listening to, returning to the places of our communal storytellers?
Well, I think it doesn't take much for us to, in this room, know who is kind of innately trusted to be the keeper of a story in white-dominated spaces, especially. I think we have to ask ourselves whose story gets told, whose story is believed, and you know who gets to tell it, who gets to tell the story in their own words. And I mean, this is ancient business, trading secrets, trading stories that aren't allowed to be told, writing letters, you know. But slowly over time, in terms of preserving a story, the stories become diluted. They become, I mean, we know this. How many banned books this year? You know, there are systems and people who have everything to gain from us forgetting who we are, from us forgetting, period. And to be people committed to communal storytelling, story exchange, and constantly questioning, okay, who are we listening to, who are we not, I think is to put things back in order, at least a step in putting things back in order.
And I think I mean, when you start talking about who are we listening to and who are we not, I think there is the noise around us that makes it easy, even convenient, for us to drown out even more, silence even more, the stories that we actually need to hear. So when you start talking about the ways in which the commodification of Black stories and Black pain, it has been used to drown out the stories of Black joy, the stories of Black laughter, the stories of Black flourishing, not just survival, but a people that flourish in space in a way. And I keep thinking to myself, how do we disrupt and silence the storytelling that is popular, familiar, economically feasible for some. In order to hear the stories that we actually may need, we need more of those stories of joy and community, so we can actually hear those stories. You have some ways of thinking about how do we turn down the volume on one and turn up the volume on the other side of storytelling?
Yeah, I think it's really complicated. Because it's so easy to kind of polarize the missions, and I'm hearing a lot in kind of younger generations, and my generation included, will say, you know, like, we're done with stories of Black trauma, like we're done. I don't need to reference any film series or whatever. I don't want to like blow them up, but you often see art critiqued now for being too trauma centric. The other day I was looking at this image from an art exhibition in Ghana, I believe, on the coastline. These gorgeous and really painful statues of in memory of people who were abducted and enslaved. And I went to the notes, the comment section of the little article, and people were criticizing it. They were saying, this is too much. Like, why are you creating this art? Can't we create art where we're not? And I think we can lose the plot a little bit and start to reject history. So I don't want to participate in that kind of narrative either. I want a complicated narrative that allows grief, that allows accurate storytelling. It happened, you know, and our art needs to reflect it. But we also need to allow it to reflect all these other dimensions of the human experience. And so when I speak about the interior world, and part of it is because there are people who don't believe we have one.
That's right.
Who they cannot possess imagination for a Black person with a rich and complicated interior world that isn't just about how hard it is to be Black. That there are people who truly see that as that being our kind of inner life. It's just not reality, and we don't need to mirror that in our art for anyone else's appetite. So we need to ask a lot of hard questions of, you know, what really happens in the interior.
Yeah, I love this because I mean I think, and we heard this in your speech today, but then also you've said it in your writings. The notion of the interior self and care for what is complicated about our inner lives is also, and attending to that is also not an act of escapism, right? Like this, that we're not escaping into the complexities of our interior selves as a way to not deal with our relationship to each other, our relationality, the larger society that we're in. You and I were talking earlier about, we both love this Thurman quote, the sound of the genuine, but one of our shared favorite parts is how Thurman talks about what it means to go inside your interior self and come out and into the self of another. Can you talk about how we begin to navigate the dangers of a kind of spirituality that is so individualistic and introspective that it thinks it doesn't need to be accountable to or responsive to the larger social world that we are all finding ourselves in? What are some of the ways in which you think about that and avoid that? How do you make this journey inside, into another, and back out into the world again?
Yeah, I mean, Thurman has been incredibly formative to me in that regard. I had read mystics and kind of contemplative minds who didn't emphasize that as much. And so you're taught a kind of self-reflection that says you should just go out into the woods somewhere by yourself, and then you'll hear something true about yourself or God or whatever. And I think Thurman resists that masterfully, and I try my best to resist that in my life by practicing interior excavation with other people. You know, Baldwin talks about, you know, not ever being able to see your own face. You know, you see it in a mirror, but like distorted. He says mirrors can only lie. And I think about that as I'm trying to figure out who I am, I need someone else at times to really see me and see my own face. And that so Thurman, when he says, if I hear the sound of the genuine in me, and you hear the sound of the genuine in you, it's possible for me to go down in me, this is what you're talking about, and come up in you. And he says, having made that pilgrimage, we can see each other eye to eye.
That's right.
We can see our own faces. And I think that's the invitation, that this work of kind of this journey inward isn't just a journey in and then leaving, but it actually requires a further pilgrimage into having an imagination for what's happening in someone else as well, and taking it seriously and being taken seriously in return.
Yeah, thank you. I'm aware of time. I want to invite you to reflect with us about what it means to every year to make this pilgrimage back to King, right? The storytelling moment of King. What inspires you as you sit this year in 2025 in this moment of reflecting on the legacy and the voice of King, the knock at midnight? What should inspire us? What should be the challenge for us as we leave this space, still contemplating, thinking about the excavation with others that you've called us to? What is a great takeaway for us in this moment?
There's, something that King said, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't know if I'll be able to quote it exactly, but he says, he talks about for those of us who know that we're called to speak, he says, we know it's a vocation of agony.
That's right.
But we do it anyways. And I'm being formed by that deeply, and I think we all could, because it's a time where people are feeling the risk of speaking, the risk of kind of telling the truth about certain things.
That's
and
right.
I find a lot of comfort and in a life's work in Dr. King that still found a way to speak, and to not be kind of confined to the tyranny of silence, the imposed silencing, that he did so with the acknowledgement that it's agony.
Yeah.
It doesn't always feel like liberation, and I'm clinging to that, and it's part of the reason why I'm here today.
Well, thank you so much for coming to Boston University and speaking with us, speaking with me, and laying before us the work of the internal self interacting with the external. We are grateful.
Thank you.
I'm back. It's like March 1895? Michael Jordan said that? 2 words. I'm back. So check this out. This is probably one of my favorite programs that we get to do every year. I always live in this agony of trying to figure out what direction do we go in, what speakers do we bring to the stage, how do we bring our faculty into this program. I agonize over people saying yes, even though I know they always say, Nick, we'll do whatever you ask, but I still agonize about it. And it made me think about this part in Cole's book, In This Here Flesh, where she starts, I believe, in the first chapter, and she says, it is said that we were made in God's image. I wonder, did God know how much pressure that they were putting on us by saying that? I read that again on Tuesday, and I was like, did I need to read that before this program? Because now I'm putting all the pressure on myself to make sure this thing is perfect. And the people that are in this room that you all see, from our interpreters to BU Productions, all the crew that make us look good, that make sure the lights are great, that make us sound good on the live stream. We're also on a Boston TV station playing right now. Can I tell you, those folks got a lot of email chains to make sure everything is perfect, right? On a 30-chain email this morning. I'm not mad at it though, whatever gets the job done. But we really like to thank those folks, for our catering people who helped out with our breakfast this morning for Age Strong. Y'all missed out. They was eating good over there. Should have got me a plate too. I'm salty about that. To our Government and Community Affairs Department, and I tell you, we do this event every year with the City of Boston, so there's a lot of contact. My good friend in the back, Kenny Ryan, we talk a lot to get this done and work with the city, but it's always great to have that conversation to make sure this program is as fruitful as it possibly can be. I want to thank Dr. Shively T.J. Smith, who is like my Thurman partner in crime. I really wish y'all can be more exposed to her. Like, this sister's bad, right? She always tells me this story about how she was working on this project, and she was like, Nick, I don't know what they're going to say to me. My name going to be next in the Bible, next to Jesus. I said, what? What do you mean? Your name will be next to Jesus in the Bible. She said, I'm working on an updated version of the Bible. Now, she was serious. It wasn't a joke. Her name is really there. I said, man, I'm slacking over here. I need to do something special, you know? And so I'm always thankful that she and I could talk hours and hours and debate Thurman from different vantage points and the things we see. In fact, she got to represent our university in India at Gandhi's ashram. I told y'all the sister bad, right? I was watching on the live stream last week, and I'm like, you gonna make it to MLK Day, right? I know you're in India, it's cool, but like, I need you to come next Saturday. So I'm eternally grateful for her in the School of Theology for loaning her to us for this program, so you all can experience her in dialogue with Cole. Cole, I want to thank you again. Your book, the one question I really have, I wish we could talk about, is how you interchangeably use different pronouns for God in your book. You start with they, you migrate to he, you use her, and then you come back to they. That's just something. That's just something to think about this from an inclusive standpoint. That's something to think about to invite and lean in an interfaith standpoint to think about that. And so there's so much in that book, if you hadn't got a chance to read This Here Flesh, just in thinking about the different stories and how she interweaves her story, her narrative, the narratives of her family, but also include some of our other elders in that book as well. If you hadn't got an opportunity to read that, I would implore you to check it out. I want to give a huge thank you to BU Libraries, the Special Collections, the folks in the Howard Gottlieb Archival Center. There's some images around the room of Martin Luther King. You saw them on the way coming in. Those are the folks we work with every year. I am meticulous about finding King speeches that I think people haven't seen yet or been exposed to. I'm meticulous on asking, where did it come from? How many times was it used? Can you ask Stanford, the Stanford papers for this? Can you ask Morehouse for this? And those folks manage to come through every single time with copies, fact-checking me on things when I get things wrong. So I truly appreciate them. I also appreciate them for this new edition that we wanted to try this year, which is preceding this program beginning at 1:45. There will be tours of the Martin Luther King Reading Room in UGAR libraries. Those folks will be able to take you around in our libraries and see some special exhibits of King, but also you'll be able to see rough drafts or book manuscripts, King's dissertation. You get to see his actual handwriting, which I think is precious to think about how close we are to history. So we're thankful for the folks in BU libraries and in UGAR libraries and the Howard Gottlieb Center as well. Thank you to those folks. Want to issue thank you to the Dean of Students Office. Thank you to Dean Campbell Foster, who's in the audience with us, who a couple years ago, he said, hey, Nick, what happens if we do this on a different day and not Monday? I was like, I don't know about that. We've been doing this on Monday for quite some time. And he said, yeah, but I'd like to see an opportunity for our students to be able to attend the program, because typically on a Monday, while it is King's holiday, it is King Day, not Inauguration Day, but King Day. Typically our students aren't around, and so we want to make an opportunity for our students to be able to join the program. And so thank you to Dean Campbell Foster for suggesting that. To my Baptist preacher, I ain't gonna be long. Which means I might be long. No, I'm just kidding. So check this out. This program, we would not be able to produce all of these things, this programs, technology, the wonderful breakfast for the senior, without the special assistance and gift. We treasure their time, their talents, and their funds that enable us to produce such an eloquent program. And so some of our donors in the audience with us, thank you to Richard and Kathy Taylor for donating for our programming, helping us and assisting with this program. These things cost money, and so we want to thank those folks. So here's what I'm gonna do. I told you I like foreshadowing next year's program. We like to get ahead, so we already there. So I'm gonna give you a little peek into what we're thinking about for next year's program. And then we got this special treat for y'all, this wonderful group of youth and band members and instruments. We heard them warm up earlier. We're gonna bring them to the stage and let them do their thing, because I ain't never gonna get between anybody in a little party, you know what I'm saying? This quote is from a sermon delivered by Martin Luther King at Ebenezer Baptist Church called, "But If Not." You may be 38 years old, as I happen to be, and one day some great opportunity stands before you and calls upon you to stand up for some great principle, some great issue, some great cause, and you refuse to do it because you are afraid. You refuse to do it because you want to live longer. You're afraid that you will lose your job, or you're afraid that you will be criticized, that you will lose your popularity, or you're afraid that someone will stab you or shoot at you or bomb your house, and so you refuse to take the stand. Well, you may go on and live until you are 90, or you're just as dead at 38 as you would be at 90. And the cessation of breathing in your life is but the belated announcement of an earlier death of the spirit. You died when you refused to stand up for right. You died when you refused to stand up for truth. You died when you refused to stand up for justice. Thank you to Martin Luther King for that. So listen, I'd be remiss as a director of the Howard Thurman Center if I don't close and reshare what Cole said earlier, where King talks about this agonizing pressure to stand up and speak. I think it's reflected in what Dr. King had to say what happens when you refuse to stand up and speak up for what's right. Or if we connect it again to what Nikki Giovanni shared with us, stand up for what's right and acknowledge what they did to my boy. Open your palms up. That was a sacred poem. We look at this as a sacred program. I want to thank you all for attending. Please stay as I introduce our wonderful young people from the Hamilton Garrett. It's called the Hamilton Garrett Youth Choir, which is an all-girls choral program in Boston focused on preserving and celebrating Black cultural music through formal training and performance. Under the artistic direction of Executive Director Jeremy Grover Flores, the choir has previously worked with multi-award-winning artists such as Patrice Rushen, Take Six, Isaac Delgado, and Alex Cuba, offering students unique opportunity for growth and collaboration. Give it up for Hamilton Garrett Youth Choir.
Good evening, everybody. We're the Hamilton Garrett Youth Choir. I am Leonie Cruz. I am the president of the youth choir and also a freshman of Boston University. I am accompanied by a few of our youth choir. We are coined as the premier youth choir of all girls who are working to preserve and celebrate Black American music. And behind us, we are accompanied by a few of our fellow Berkeley alums and BAA alums to play with us as well. So the first song we will be singing is I Don't Feel No Ways Tired. Please enjoy. I don't feel no ways tired. from six-time Grammy-nominated winner Take Six, and we will be singing Over the Hill is Home. As two men walked, I heard one said, this road is rough, and I don't know if I'll make it through. But then the other turned and said, stay your course, for just ahead, the place you seek is sure to come to you. Just down the road is shelter. When you don't feel like trying, keep climbing, 'cause over the hill is home. So if you ever find yourself out of strength and need of help, know that hope is just a prayer away. The strength of God is always near, a faithful guide to lead you there. His mission is to show us the way. Just down the road, just down the road is shelter. When you don't feel like trying, keep on climbing, 'cause over the hill is home. On the other side of night comes a day that shines so bright. Over the hill is home. Through the valleys, he will guide children by his side, and over the hill is home. Cause over the hill is on the other side of night comes a day that shines so bright. You may feel a little weary, but Jesus helps you as you ride on his wings. Through the mountains he will guide, and over the hill is home. Though the mountains seem so high, you can make it if you try. Over the hill is home. Is home.
next song we're going to be singing is talking about love. I think that's something that we should all know about, right, is love. Especially at a time like this, you know, we love our community. We love the leaders that we stand for. We love the leaders that we support. So, yeah. I've never had anything as good as you, and I don't think I ever will. They tell me that real love's too good to be true, and I ain't living in a fairy tale. 'Cause if you had it, then you know it. What I'm talking about is love, love. Have you ever felt it? The one that comes from above. Ain't nothing like it. And I've tried other loves before. But this love that I'm talking about, it's a real love, it's sure. What I'm talking about is love. What I'm talking about is love. I've never had anything as good as you, and I don't think I ever will. They tell me that real love's too good to be true, and I ain't living in a fairy tale. 'Cause if you had it, then you know it. What I'm talking about is love, love. Have you ever felt it? The one that comes from above, above. Ain't nothing like it. And I've tried other loves before. But this love that I'm talking about, it's a real love, it's sure. What I'm talking about is love. Yeah. What I'm talking about is love. Yeah. What I'm talking about is love. Oh, what I'm talking about, love.
think you can do that for me? Okay, it's very simple, and it goes like this. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I'll sing one more time. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. Okay. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I can't hear you. I don't wanna love nobody but 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 you. One last time. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. I don't wanna love nobody but you. Thank you. And for our last and final song of the night to close, I would like everybody to stand as we sing the special anthem for Martin Luther King. Lift every voice and sing.
right, I want to give another round of applause to Hamilton Garrett Youth Choir. For those that are interested in the tours of the Martin Luther King Reading Room in Mugar Library, you can go down the main stairs and meet by the library entrance, which is right there to your left once you go down the stairs. If you're interested in the tours of the Martin Luther King Reading Room, just go right down the stairs and walk a few more steps, and to the left you'll see the entrance to Mugar Library. Thank you for coming to our program. Have a great day.